In 1995, a comet called Hale Bopp arrived. And it was a very bright comet. It's the brightest comet that had been seen for a while. This was before Comet Hakutaki and Comet Neat and some of the other big comets that we've seen. And while this was happening, while the comet was approaching, I was busy digging this fire pit. And I was sort of resonating with a certain sort of energy then that had to do with these deep cycles of the Earth, of the movements that the Earth goes through in the solar system that brings in these sorts of other influences that I now have a very different understanding of since I have made the discoveries that I've made with astrophotometry. But there was a cult back then called the Heaven's Gate cult. And they were convinced that this comet was actually some sort of spacecraft, some sort of rescue ship that they could somehow get on by killing themselves. And there's this story, I'll link it in the comments, about Heaven's Gate and what they did. They sort of committed suicide en masse to go get on this comet. And the physicist Nassim Haramein also seems to think that these are sort of interstellar craft that use the sun as a Stargate. Now, in astrophotometry, I've sort of demonstrated that the sun is a sort of Stargate, that it is a sort of time-space composite of the Earth's movement on the hydrogen and helium frequencies. And so in other words, it resonates with Earth's hydrocarbon harmonics, and it's sort of a displaced integrated version of the Earth. And so some of these stories have little threads, from my perspective, have little threads of reality. But when this comet showed up, I found this stone, this very unusual looking stone, in the pit, in the bottom of the pit. This is sort of where I stopped digging. And it looks sort of like a skull. But the funny thing about it, it has these places where it sort of looks like it was tied at some point. Like the whole time that I was digging the pit, I felt like I was retracing the steps of someone else who had done the same sort of thing before. And when I found this, I was like scratching my head, and I'm like, ooh, this is really weird. Now in Indiana, these are common. We call these geodes. People probably have seen geodes before, but this one is unusual because it has this seam in it. And when I got it out of the pit, I just went like that, and it came open, and it was sealed, but I just put a little pressure on it, and it just came perfectly open like that, just in my hands, like somebody had somehow gotten it open and then put it back together and then tied it and buried it for a very long time. And knowing what I know about energy now and the cycles of energy and how I react to energetic things involving the sun, and knowing what I know about how these comets influence the energy that the sun is giving off, this has sort of become a sort of puzzle in my life. This is sort of this memento I have of this sort of spiritual excursion that I went on back in 1995. And I've always wondered about Hale Bopp and about those characters because of this. And I don't believe that what they did was true. I don't believe that they actually caught a ride on a UFO that looked like a comet. And that's not my belief. But at the same time, it makes you wonder, you know, these are the sorts of things that move people to make these sorts of assertions about the nature of our world.